There's some big news to share about the ongoing push to get suppressors and short-barreled rifles removed from the NFA across the country. A brand new lawsuit just got filed, and it's going to be heard by a judge who has a track record of shutting down ATF actions that violate Second Amendment rights. Let's dive into what's happening with this crucial legal battle. Before we get started, I need you to do something really quick. Smash that like button right now if you care about protecting your Second Amendment rights. It only takes a second, and it makes a huge difference in getting this information out to more people who need it. Also, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any future updates on your rights. Trust me, you're going to want to stay informed about this stuff. Like I mentioned at the start, we need to discuss what's currently unfolding in reaction to H.R. 1, the big beautiful bill, and how it changed the NFA tax from $200 down to $0. If you've been watching this channel for any length of time, you know that H.R. 1 passed and became law, but it only reduced the NFA tax from $200 to nothing. Sadly, certain members of Congress who should have fought harder weren't willing to push for the complete versions of the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act to be included in that bill. On top of that, they also refused to remove the Senate parliamentarian who was the one responsible for striking out the full language we actually wanted. So in the end, all we managed to get was the tax reduction. In response to that change, we've recently seen Democrats like Senator Chris Murphy introduce a proposed amendment to the military spending bill that would jack up the NFA tax requirement all the way to $4,279 per stamp. So Democrats have already moved to counter the $0 tax change, but at the same time, multiple Second Amendment organizations have filed lawsuits trying to eliminate all the other restrictions that still exist on these NFA items. We've covered how GOA, FPC, Silencer Shop, Palmetto State Armory, Silencer Co., and 15 different states teamed up to file a lawsuit in the Northern District of Texas. And now there's another lawsuit that's also been filed in the Northern District of Texas. This new case is called Jensen versus the ATF. Actually, one of the people watching this channel is the main named plaintiff in this case, and he contacted me about it. This is a significant case brought by individual plaintiffs, I believe some gun shops and Second Amendment organizations. And it was filed in the Northern District of Texas to get rid of all the remaining NFA restrictions on suppressors and SBRs. What makes this case particularly important is that it's been assigned to Judge Matthew Kaczmarek. You might recognize that judge's name because he's issued rulings in the past that have been very pro-Second Amendment and very favorable, especially when it comes to striking down ATF restrictions like the pistol brace rule and the 80% lower rules. There were several cases that Judge Matthew Kaczmarek handled where he ultimately ruled in a pro-Second Amendment way. In this lawsuit filed by the plaintiffs alongside Second Amendment organizations like FPC, CCR2K, and the Texas State Rifle Association, they're arguing that since there's no longer a tax on items like suppressors, SBRs, SBSs, and AOWs, there's no longer any valid constitutional justification to keep regulating these items under the NFA. In the lawsuit, they argue that suppressors are protected arms and that they're used for lawful purposes by law-abiding citizens for all kinds of reasons, including self-defense and recreational shooting. They explain in their challenge that a suppressor is a safe, effective, and commonly used device that reduces the noise level of a gunshot. Suppressors make using a firearm a better experience. They lower the risk of permanent hearing damage. They help protect the hearing of hunters and people who are nearby. They cut down on noise pollution from firearms discharges. They make firearms training safer and more effective. They increase the accuracy and ease of use for firearms by reducing felt recoil and shot flinch. And they improve the effectiveness of firearms for self-defense and defending your home. They point out that contrary to what you see in movies and on TV, suppressors don't eliminate all sound from a gunshot, and they're rarely used by criminals. They also argue that SBRs are protected arms. When talking about suppressors and SBRs, they say that SBRs are also protected arms and they can't be classified as dangerous and unusual items. They state in their arguments that short-barreled rifles are clearly arms under the plain text of the Second Amendment. Their use can only be restricted if they're both dangerous and unusual. Short-barreled rifles are not dangerous and unusual weapons. The Constitution therefore guarantees the right of law-abiding citizens to possess and use those items. This, combined with the fact that the Big Beautiful Bill has now eliminated the tax on these items, on these protected arms, essentially means that the remaining NFA restrictions on those items should also be struck down. That's what's being argued in this challenge. They argue that the NFA's registration and related requirements on untaxed firearms exceeds Congress's enumerated powers and are therefore unconstitutional. Congress passed the NFA explicitly premised on, and the Supreme Court upheld the NFA as an exercise of Congress's taxing powers. As a result of the Big Beautiful Bill, nearly all of the firearms covered by the NFA except for machine guns and destructive devices are now untaxed. Yet the comprehensive registration scheme to make, transfer, and receive or possess those firearms remains in effect. The individual plaintiffs, along with the Second Amendment organizations, are arguing that they're being harmed by the NFA's unconstitutional requirements. They state that plaintiffs are entitled to a declaration that the NFA's requirements to make, transfer, receive, possess, or otherwise use firearms untaxed under the NFA now and any regulations implementing those laws exceeds Congress's enumerated powers and thus are unconstitutional both facially and as applied to these individuals. They state that the plaintiffs are entitled to a permanent injunction against the defendants, the ATF, their officers and agents, and they asked for a permanent injunction stopping the implementation of the NFA going forward. To sum it up, what the plaintiffs are asking for in this challenge is for the court to declare that the NFA's registration and transfer requirements are now unconstitutional. There is no congressional basis or constitutional basis for registering or restricting these types of items, especially now that they're untaxed. So that's what this new lawsuit aims to accomplish in response to the NFA tax changes that just passed in the Big Beautiful Bill. Now, why this is also really interesting, why this case and this specific challenge matters to me, is because this case has been assigned to Judge Matthew Kaczmarek in the Northern District of Texas. The Northern District of Texas currently sits under the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which has generally been very good to the Second Amendment movement, but also specifically this judge, Matthew Kaczmarek, has been really good. He's had other lawsuits in front of him. He's issued pro-Second Amendment rulings in the past against the ATF, striking down ATF restrictions on pistol braces, 80% lowers, and other issues as well. So this is a perfect judge for this type of case. He's probably one of the best judges you could ask for, probably outside of Judge Reed O'Connor, who is also great in the Northern District of Texas. But Judge Matthew Kaczmarek is one of those judges that really understands the Second Amendment movement. He understands firearms. He understands these ATF restrictions and regulations. He understands the NFA. He's dealt with them before in prior cases. So this is the perfect judge for this challenge, and this is one of the perfect cases to now challenge the NFA at large. There are currently a lot of moving parts right now in the challenges against the NFA. Even more lawsuits have been launched, and now even Democrats are trying to launch amendment bills to try to increase the NFA tax change. We have cases currently in federal district courts, courts of appeals, and even 2 current cases seeking Supreme Court review dealing with short-barreled rifle restrictions and the whole NFA issues. It's going to be interesting to see how the Trump administration responds to this specific case based on what they've already said in some of these other NFA challenges, like at the Supreme Court level that we've talked about before in previous videos. Go back and watch those videos for the NFA challenges that are currently in the Supreme Court and how the Trump administration is dealing with this. I suspect that they're going to say that the NFA operates as a constitutional law. That even though there is now a $0 tax, they're still going to argue that they can still put restrictions on these items because they're dangerous and unusual items. But we're going to have to wait and see essentially how they argue in these cases. Maybe they'll shift their policy based on all the heat that they got recently, but that is what they've argued in the past, and I don't anticipate that they will change that unless there's enough pressure on the DOJ to do that. But this case I will especially be keeping my eyes on because of the jurisdiction and the favorable draw of the judge, Judge Matthew Kaczmarek, who has issued very solid pro-Second Amendment rulings in the past. As we get more information as this case develops, I will let you guys know. If you found this information valuable, do me a favor and hit that like button right now. It helps get this critical information in front of more gun owners who need to know about these changes. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on your rights. Share this video with every gun owner you know because this information is too important to keep to yourself. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. And never forget this nation was built by rights and reloads, and this nation will be maintained by rights and reloads. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.